Hello, and welcome to another episode of Moving Picture Massacre. This is episode 7. 7 already out of season 2. I'm shocked by it too. We have, been actually doing things. That's kind of cool. Most of the time, we just watch movies and don't tell the world about them, or the 50 or so people of you, not the world. Anyways, let's talk about a giallo movie from the 90s, 1993 to be specific. We are talking about Dario Argento's Trauma. Again, this is a 1993 movie. The biggest name on the front that pops out to me is Brad Dourif down here in the corner. We don't see a lot of Brad Dourif until closer to the end of the movie, and in all honesty, I think has the worst death in the entire movie. I tried to think about it, and yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later. As if you've never been here before, this is what we do. We buy movies on VHS that we have never seen or heard of before, whether they were $1 or whether we splurged and spent $3. We bought them to check them out and then talk about them with you guys. My name is Tom, and I'm here with Matt and Ricky. And today I'm going to go ahead and read you this extensive description on the back of this movie, and hopefully not stumble over myself, so I can let you know what this movie is about. Christopher Rydell stars with Oscar-nominated Brad Dourif. Again, that's already misleading in my opinion, but we'll get into it. And Piper Laurie in this nail-biting, edge-of-your-seat tale of terror from the acclaimed, brilliantly innovative horror director Dario Argento. The instant he meets beautiful, troubled young runaway Aura, which it's very hard for me to pronounce that name, and I've listened to it the whole movie because they scream it all the time, and when I see the spelling, I just don't get that's how that works out. A-U-R-A, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, I digress. David falls under her strangely seductive spell. Then he gets the shocking news that Aura's parents have become the latest victims of a bloodthirsty, psychotic killer known as the Headhunter. Following an eerie trail of decapitated victims, David and Aura discover a chilling link between the murders. But now, the monstrous, head-collecting psychopath is stalking them, and their only hope for escaping the maniac's razor-edged onslaught is to unearth an unholy secret buried deep within Aura's nightmarish past. Also featuring Frederick Forrest and James Rousseau in its haunting vision of unrelenting horror that builds to a terrifying climax you'll never forget. Before we go too far into this movie, I'm going to say this is in no way near my favorite Argento movie at all. And I was kind of excited to watch one because, in all honesty, I watched 2 of them like 2 days ago, not even remembering that this is what our next episode was going to be on. So I felt like I was pretty primed for giallo. And we got American giallo because this is only one of 2 movies he shot in America. And that's probably why we have no Goblin doing the soundtrack. They didn't get to do the soundtrack because the American producers were like, nah, we got to appeal to all these Americans more, and Goblin doesn't work for that, which makes no sense to me at all. But Ricky, I'm going to let you start. Tell me what you thought about this movie just overall.
This movie was a big letdown for me. Watching the opening credits, you see Tom Savini's name pop up as the special effects artist, and in my opinion, the way Argento wrote this film, Savini didn't really get the freedom that he needed to work his magic. Granted, the prosthetic decapitated heads did look fantastic. He didn't really have a lot of freedom to do his over-the-top, just blood and gore effects that he normally does. So that was a bit of a letdown. The storyline of the movie was extremely uncomfortable for me. The primary focus of this film is a love story between a 16-year-old suicidal anorexic girl and a 30-year-old news artist. So that was extremely uncomfortable. Just watching him form this romantic relationship with a 16-year-old was not fun. And now, from an outside point of view, yes, Asia Argento is beautiful. But why does Dario insist on his daughter being nude in every film that he makes? Every Argento movie I have seen, Asia is either topless or completely naked in the movie. That's your child, man. What are you doing? Like, for me, from an outsider's perspective, I'm like, yes, Asia Argento's naked, awesome. But that's your daughter, man. You're supposed to protect her from that kind of thing, especially when she's underage, like she was in this movie. But anyway, before I keep ranting, Matt, what did you think?
I actually, surprisingly, I didn't hate this movie. This might be the first giallo movie I've watched. I've also not seen many Argento movies. So the only one that comes to mind that I can think of is Demons. Where they go to the movie theater at the Interpol. That's Demons, right? Okay, and it's not that level of Argento, but I honestly I didn't hate this movie. I kind of enjoyed it. I liked, there was a lot of off camera kills. At least I call them off camera. They happen technically off camera, but the actual gore and the what was happening, it was a lot of sound effects, and they did everything they could to not show you until like right at the end. I didn't mind that at all. Like Tom said, he didn't like the Brad Dourif kill, and I actually kind of laughed at it. I thought it was fun. It is kind of weird knowing now that that is Dario Argento's daughter. That kind of makes me like cringe a little bit. Um, Also, the guy in the movie, he weirded me out at times, the main character, but it wasn't enough for me to be like, I don't like this movie. I've seen much worse, uh, especially movies that we've watched just this season. I've seen way worse than this. So this movie was nice for me to sit back and say, man, I'm not just cringing at the entire story or the effects or the CGI that's going on screen right now. So I liked it, and I'm ready to talk more about it. Some stuff that I like, some stuff that I hated. Tom?
Beautiful. Well, as the box said, and as Ricky said, there becomes this relationship where a 30 something gentleman takes in this young, anorexic, suicidal girl because she's having problems and she needs help. Well, what really weirded me out, as Ricky was saying, with the relationship that they ended up having, was this relationship to me became a relationship instantly. And it was directly after she saw him having sex with somebody else. She ran away from the house when she saw them having sex. He chased her down in his car, found her on the side of the road, grabbed her, and then the next morning they're kissing and cuddling and playing and romping around on the bed. And like it was a night and day situation on their relationship. And it's not okay. Again, it's not okay. She's way too young and she's very, very vulnerable for many, many reasons. The section right before that, where he first brings her to take care of her to his home and she's changing, pulls her top off. He walks by the bathroom, sees her doing this, and just stands there, watches her do it. She turns and goes, and he just doesn't move. Just keeps going. He's staring like nothing. No, his expression didn't even change on his face. Nothing. Just stood there for another couple seconds and was like, all right, and just walked away. I really wonder sometimes if I know directors are artists and writers are artists of people. You know what I mean? They do very artsy things that a lot of people can't do, things that I'm sure we could not do. But people don't act like that. And if they do act like that, that 16-year-old girl isn't going to fall in love with that dude. That's weird. Unless, I don't know. I guess I can't say that because a lot of scarred people end up doing really terrible life decisions in many ways, especially in relationship wise. But yeah, this movie again, it was not my favorite Argento movie by any means, but it wasn't the worst one, I would say. I don't know, actually. I enjoyed quite a few of them, and this one is kind of low on the totem pole for me. But Ricky, let's go into a little bit of the storyline. I'm trying to think of the best way to do it. So yeah, tell me about how things take place with the passing, or talk about her mom, and how the killer pops up and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we're first introduced to her parents. The What are they? They're like social workers, I guess, that bring her home after she's run away. She gets out of that little asylum where they put her on the feeding tubes and all that, whatever, blah blah blah. But basically they were drugging her at this facility, so she runs away. Social services picks her up, brings her back home to her parents' house, and she goes home, and her parents, apparently her mother is some kind of psychic medium, and they're holding some kind of seance. And during this seance, uh
There were frogs and oh wait, no, wrong movie. Sorry.
lizards.
Yeah.
But apparently during the seance, she says the killer is present through her medium, and while she's doing her little seance, you can hear both voices. You can hear her voice and the voice that she's conjuring. But apparently she says the killer is present, and later on in the movie you find out that the killer only kills when it's raining. And there's one part of this movie that I found extremely clever that I loved that we'll get into later. But yeah, so both of her parents end up dying during the seance because everyone gets up and just like runs out of the room. And another part that was very clever, you see the killer walk away with two severed heads. We'll get into that later. But yeah, you basically find out that this person's only killing when it's raining, blah blah blah, and her parents are dead, and it gets pretty convoluted a little bit there, but everything gets explained later on in the movie. But there were a lot of points to this movie that I really did like. There were a lot of things that I really disliked. Matt, anything you want to add to it before we start getting into the likes and dislikes?
I'm kind of like you. I like some of the plot twists in the movie. I liked a lot of the shots that they did too. I thought that Argento, framed up some of the scenes really well. One thing that I was wondering about, you mentioned the lizards, and I actually owned one of those lizards before. It's called a tokay gecko, and it's an Indonesian lizard, and they made it to seem like it was kind of like a wild thing where they were at. After knowing that they filmed in the States, that, this is, they just add it to the color palette because it's kind of like a blue lizard with some really bright spots on it, and they look really cool. It was fun to see that. One of the things I did like was Chekhov's gun in this movie. It necessarily wasn't a weapon per se as it was a person. They keep showing this person through the whole movie, and I'm not gonna, say who it is right now. We can talk about it later. But you're like, what is this person adding to this movie? And then, at the end, you're like, whoa, crap! Like, I didn't see that coming, and that was probably my favorite kill of the movie, was what happened at the end. Um, Trying to think of other things I did like about it. The I like you said, the initial killing of the parents was cool, where it takes the dad's head and they hold it up in front, so you don't know who it is. And they do a really good job of keeping that a mystery through the whole movie, because it's like, well, maybe it's this guy with all the heads in his office. But then you start thinking, well, that's too obvious. It can't be that person. And then they frame that person later on in the movie, and you're like, oh, well, I guess it was, and then it's not. So that was fun. I do wish that they had told certain parts of the story in a different order, though, that would have made sense. Because, characters were dying, and you don't find out until like halfway through the movie that they had something to do with each other. And that kind of bothered me a little bit. I think I would have liked to have known a little bit more about the characters that were being killed off per se. But yeah, other than that, those are the things that I really, really liked. There's also, like Ricky said, some things that I don't as well. Um, Tom, where do you want to go with this next?
Let's see. I don't know if there's anything that I super disliked. There's definitely some things that were just kind of weird and maybe dragged on a little bit and that kind of thing. But again, one of the later deaths that I did mention earlier was the Brad Dourif character, and it was okay until you got to the very last little section of it, and it was just a bad green screen behind him because you could see like the outline of his head on the screen. And at a comical aspect, it's funny, but did we want funny at all in the rest of this movie? I don't think that was the goal for any of that. So I wasn't a huge fan of how that played out, but it was cool to see Brad Dourif. Matt and I both said the same thing, that it just kind of looked like Chris Kattan took a couple hard ones one day and didn't shave for, like he looked a little roughed up, but it looked like I was watching an episode of SNL from the 90s. But it was cool to see him, even though it was a pretty small role for being your name on the top billing there. And again, as Ricky said, we got very excited in the very beginning of the movie when Tom Savini's name popped up, and I expected to see some pretty gory kills, because just the other day when I watched the other another Argento movie, like I mentioned, there was so much bright, vivid blood everywhere, and I was hoping for that. And again, I don't know if it's because we went into them filming in the States and using producers out here and that kind of thing, trying to make a American giallo film, if that was kind of the downfall of what we got. I'm not really 100% sure. So again, we find out that we see her mom and dad die. She goes off running and winds up finding this news guy who is dating or just banging the the what's it called, news reporter, the anchor on TV. And so the part that really actually, going back to her age, the other guy that worked in the writer's room or artist's room in the newsroom, when he first talks to the main character about this girl, he's like, "Oh, did you get in her pants?" And his response is, "She's just a kid." And the other guy's response is, Ricky, do you remember it? Did you get into her like school outfit or something like that? It was fucking disgusting. I was like, that is not okay, bud. And then the worst part about it is, this again is before they started a relationship. So the main character himself flat out says she's just a kid. Then you gotta start banging the kid. So that's gross. That was gross. I'm trying to think of where else I went with this. Ricky, I'm gonna let you go ahead. I have nothing else to say.
Well, in my last little segment where I was kind of ranting and rambling a little bit, I did mention two things that I thought were super clever. One was when Linda's death in the hotel room, when they're David and Aura are sitting in the hotel room, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry, the weather's beautiful, so we're okay." But Linda's death, he lights that newspaper on fire and holds it up to the fire sprinkler. Boom. Now it's raining. I can kill her. So that was extremely clever. Another one was when we were talking about her parents' death early in the movie, which, spoiler alert, as everyone knows, if you've been to this page before, this is not a spoiler for your review. This movie is 30 years old. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. But so when her parents die and they're holding the two heads up, you notice one is held directly in front of the killer's face. While the father's head's over here, the mother's head's right here. The mother's just holding her own hair. That's all it was. So, I mean, you don't learn that until the end of the movie, but yes, the mother is the killer. And her death was awesome. I love the little kid getting his revenge. And speaking of that little blonde kid, he was mad as hell early in the movie when that lizard ate that butterfly. He was so mad, he broke into his neighbor's house to chase down this lizard that ate the butterfly. But other than that, I don't really think I have any more bullet points to bring up. Oh, yes, I do. One thing that bothered me so much. It's like a little dream sequence, and the Aura in her little dream sequence just grabs a VHS tape, rips the back of it off, and starts pulling all the ribbon out. I was like, no, we have to preserve these things. They're not as prevalent anymore. It hurt my heart so bad to see that tape get ripped apart. But I'll let it go. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, the kid, that was what I was talking about earlier with Chekhov's gun. Like I think it applies to that situation, right? Yeah, like they keep showing this kid and he's watching butterflies. He breaks into his neighbor's house, but nothing really ever happens to where you're like, well, that's why they're showing this kid. And then at the end of the movie, he like takes the device that he was already semi sort of familiar with because he had like messed with it when he broke into the house, and he wraps it around the mom's neck and he turns it on and lets it go. And like Ricky said, it was the coolest kill in the movie because you actually get to see it like sever the neck, and then the head goes rolling when she falls over. I was like, that was awesome. And that was like typical Tom Savini type art that he would do. And I think that was probably the best. I also, I'm with Tom. I like 50% didn't like the Brad Dourif death, but I like um the beginnings of it when he's there and they basically guillotine him with the elevator. I probably would have cut out the green screen, and if I was Tom Savini, that's like an open elevator shaft. I would have got, a straight ahead angle at the bottom floor, and I would have just dropped in like a prop head and just watch it go on the ground. And I think that would have looked awesome to just, see his head get cut off. It falls down from the top, and then it flips to a different shot and it just busts on the ground. That would have been fantastic. But no, you kind of got a dumb green screen, which yeah, can ruin it for pretty much everyone, and I thought that was weak as well. But overall, like I said before, I actually like semi sorta enjoyed this movie. Um, the pedophilia stuff, obviously, I don't like everything Tom had mentioned that was really uncomfortable and he didn't like. I also did not like, but the detective aspect side of it, the slasher side of it, I actually enjoyed that part of the story. um, there were a lot of weird things though that you kind of really have to navigate around so you're not ruining the movie for yourself. Other than that, you know, I don't know if I have any other stuff that comes to mind. Tom, you got anything to add?
Yeah, you definitely need to. We need to give you a stack of giallo movies to watch because it's all detective, black gloves with a knife, killing someone, first person killings. You never see who it is to the very end of the movie, and there's always some sort of a twist. Most of the time it's just like a guy dressed up as a lady. That happens a lot, but there's always a twist there. Black gloves and a razor blade. That's key there. Um, so the mother that is killing all of these people in the rain, they're all tied in together, as we mentioned, but we don't learn until the very end. And how they're tied in together is they were all in the doctor's office when she was giving birth. They were assisting her giving birth. Now, the most ridiculous freak accident in the entire world seems to happen as she's giving birth to her son. The son gets decapitated. It's raining outside, hence the rain killings. She kills everyone that works. Well, not everyone. There's more people in that doctor's office, so I feel like we got robbed of some kills, really. But She kills a good amount of people that were working that day trying to help her give birth, and she lost her kid. So that kind of threw her down a rabbit hole, apparently. And again, her husband was also in that room, so that's why she killed her husband. I can't say I've watched another movie where a child was accidentally, a newborn was accidentally decapitated. That is a new one, I think. Watching a nurse pick up a little like balled up napkin and just like set it in the little bucket, like, that's a child's head. Look at that. So that was interesting. But overall, we watched a movie. So if no one else has anything to add, let's go ahead and rate this movie. And I'm going to start, which I don't normally do, just so neither of you influence my thoughts here. And as far as I know I've said it multiple times in this whole thing, as far as Argento movies go, especially ones that I literally just watched, I think Trauma is going to get 2 stars out of me. I didn't hate this movie. I don't know if I would watch it again, in all honesty, compared to most of his others or many of his others. I know he just put out a movie, I think it was last year, called Dark Glasses, and I'm kind of afraid to watch it because it's one of those things like John Carpenter, to where as time went on, the movies just lost what we loved so much about those early ones, and I'm really afraid to go and just like sully the name, I guess. I don't need to watch another Ghost of Mars or Ghost from Mars or whatever that awful Carpenter movie is. So I may skip that. We'll see. But Trauma gets 2 stars from me. Ricky, what's your rating?
Well, before I rate it, I just wanted to add to what you were saying about the whole her baby being decapitated scene. I don't understand that, how that would happen, because like when I was being born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around my throat. So anytime they would try to get me out, I would go right back in. They're like, we got a problem here. So they had to emergency C-section me. So I'm pretty sure they would have figured that out. Like, I don't. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to be. But before you went with your rating, I had 2 in mind. It was uncomfortable, but there were some redeeming qualities to the movie. So it wasn't the worst. It wasn't the best. Yeah, it's about on par with his Dracula movie that he did about 10 years ago, which wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible. I mean, it was fun. It's got some good, it's got some bad. So, Matt, what do you think?
I'm gonna give it a 2.5. Like just right in the middle. I'm not super familiar with giallo, like we talked about. That's probably the first one I've watched, unless you count Demons, a giallo movie. And it's not really on par with that. But at the same time, like I said, I didn't not like it. There are aspects of it I did not like, but overall, the story and the movie itself, um, I enjoyed more than a lot of movies we have watched. So yeah, about 2.5 for me. I can't rate it any higher than that, just because of the things that are issues in the movie. It, like Ricky and Tom said, it is uncomfortable, and I would feel terrible to rate it higher than a 2.5. So 2.5 is where I stand.
I got one more thing before we pick our movie for next week. Since Matt's not very familiar with giallo films, Tom and I, let's go ahead and recommend just one for him to watch. Doesn't have to be Argento, just giallo in general. I'll throw mine out there. Check out New York Ripper. New York Ripper is a lot of fun. Check that one out.
I'll add that to the list.
That is good. God. I would have to say Deep Red, I think, is what I ended up going with.
That was Argento's first movie, right?
I think so. It's really early if it's not the first. I think Deep Red is awesome, and everyone should watch that at one point in time. It's like I would love to call Suspiria a giallo movie, but it's not. It's more of like a witch movie. Supernaturally kind of, sort of. But if you want to consider it one, I'll take it and go with that. But there's no black gloves, so I can't call it that. Fair enough. All right. Well, now you got a couple, and I'm sure we have many more. And if any of you watching this has any suggestions for Matt when it comes to giallo movies, please throw them in there, in that comment section. So let's check out what we're going to watch next week-ish or so for episode 8. I'm going to run the little guy. Look at it go. It's going, it's going, it's going. It's hard to see what's happening. And, oh, man, 2 of my movies in a row.
Oh.
We're going with Dr. Caligari. So this might be a hard one to find. I don't know streaming wise if we will find it. So you guys may have to, I don't know. Anyways, this is the unofficial sequel to The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And it looks batshit crazy. The doctor is a lady, and she looks like she's doing lots of weird, like, plastic surgery kind of thing. I have no idea. It looks absolutely bananas. So I'm thoroughly excited. Ricky, I know, is thoroughly excited. It should be a very interesting episode for episode 8. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. We can't wait to get to that next movie. And go ahead and hit that like button if you enjoyed it, the subscribe button if you haven't done it already, all those good things. Go ahead and check out the audio versions on anywhere you can find podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, all those types of things, if you just want to listen to us and not look at our terribly beautiful faces. So, at that, thank you guys again, and we'll see you next time.